Welcome to The Skinny for Friday, February 7th. I'm Mitch Perry, the senior political reporter for the Florida Phoenix, joined today by my colleagues, Creative Loafing Editor-in-Chief Ray Roa and best-selling author and independent reporter Ben Montgomery. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, Mitch. How you doing today?
Yeah.
Good to see y'all. Okay, we're 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks almost into the Trump 2.0 presidency. How's it all going for you?
Oh, my goodness.
Feels like a year, my friend.
What a rush.
My body wasn't ready for this. I don't remember this from 16.
We are going to get into it. We are going to get into it later in the show. Of course, some of you might have saw there was protests around the country, including here in Tampa on Wednesday. And some of the folks that were involved with that will be on the show later in the program. We'll be talking to them. But first, we're going to be talking about all types of local and state politics here with our friend here in the studio, John Hill, the longtime editorial writer for the Tampa Bay Times, and now a columnist as of January 1st. John, thank you so much for coming to the studio. Welcome to The Skinny.
Thanks, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here with us, and so much to talk about. Let's concentrate a lot on, right here in Tampa and Hillsborough County. What to bring up? Okay, so you are a columnist there. So talk to us about that. This is a new development in your career here at the Times.
So we moved over to writing more columns after January 1st. The idea is to what we're trying to do is really maximize what we view as our strengths on the editorial page. So Graham Brink, the editor of editorials, is going to be writing probably quite a bit about business and Pinellas County, which he has a very strong background in. My background is more in Hillsborough and in government. So anyway, we the field's open. We can write about whatever we want, but I would generally think that's where we're going to sort of fall down. I've been doing it now for 5 weeks, and that's generally what I've been doing. So, the good thing is that I've been able to write much more about Tampa and Hillsborough. I mean, if you look at the editorials I wrote in 24, back out the political stuff, which is pretty prescribed in election year. I never really wrote very often about Tampa or Hillsborough. It was about DeSantis or the legislature just in 5 weeks, I've been able to write, 2, 3, 4 pieces anyway about the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County. So it's a lot of fun to actually get back and sort of use sort of your knowledge of your area and to write. And
a column from this last weekend, you wrote kind of personal about a situation with your home, your neighbor, the guy, somebody you called Alley Guy, and it seemed to me to be reflecting a lack of cohesion in a community. As you wrote, when you talked to us about what you were writing about, but you said it was a sad comment about the group state of group behavior. So tell our listeners about that.
So the story's about some new residents who moved in on an alley that we share with the next block. And over time, he kept throwing stuff over his fence into the sort of my side of the alley. It's a vacated alley, so I have enjoyment of my half, he has enjoyment of his, but you have to maintain it. That's part of code. So everything that he threw over his fence, I had to pick up. And take out.
He's just tossing bags of trash over the fence.
I mentioned a few things: pipe, wood, a dog crate. I found some rat traps the other day. So there was a lot more. And I mentioned in the piece how I walked over there, but I've actually had a conversation with him before about this, so it wasn't new.
Yeah.
Maybe it didn't make an impression. So I did walk over. We had a conversation. Everything was fine. It's only been a couple weeks, nothing left. But the whole point was, we're growing here in Tampa, and everybody in every neighborhood is going through this. They're knocking down the older homes. They're splitting lots up. They're building big homes. So it wasn't unlike anything that anybody else is going through in South Tampa, Summer Heights, Tampa Heights. So I thought, maybe people might connect with this. The group dynamic thing sort of came a little bit later, just when I sort of was thinking more and more about the changes that have taken place in the neighborhood with people letting their dogs run unleashed in parks and the 8, 10, 12-year-olds on golf carts and things like that. So that was just a little different. But, the other point was that, my house is 100 years old. generations of people have seen change.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing to, it's just something that, it's just one of those sort of minor annoyances that's just part of
living in American society.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Hillsborough County. Again, we're talking with John Hill, Tampa Bay Times, a longtime editorial writer, and we want to open up the phones early here. We're going to be talking about all types of different issues here, 813-239-9663. So Hillsborough County met the commission on Wednesday, and they were about to vote, like so many cities in Florida have, just in the last 6 months since Joseph Ladapo, our Surgeon General, said, hey, Florida in the water, not a thing anymore, really. And it looked like it might pass. It actually didn't. It deadlocked at 3-3. Democrat Harry Cohen was joined by 2 Republicans on the county commission, because obviously this is a red county commission, went red a couple years ago. Were you surprised how that went down?
No, I wasn't surprised. I mean, if you look back at, look back at the reorganization and where the Republicans split. Christine Miller and Bowles went with Harry. With Commissioner Hagan. They did not go with Commissioners Wastel.
No, they went with Commissioner Cohen, Harry Cohen.
I'm backing up to the organizational session.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
When the new commissioners, I don't want to say showed their hand a little bit, but they broke in a reorganization with Commissioner Hagan, the much more moderate wing, if you want to call it that. And since then, just watching the discussions, they did tend to break with Commissioner Hagan. Now, Commissioner Miller did vote to remove fluoride. I wasn't too surprised with that. Just sort of at face value, giving that conservative East County district, but I'm not sure that issue plays well. I'm not sure that vote plays well.
Hold on, John. I thought the vote was Wastel. Okay, so I remember the other people on the board. Now, I thought Miller and Bowles joined Cohen to vote against removing fluoride. The other members, which are Josh Wastel, who were the other members on the board? Gwen Myerson was not there.
So the 3 voting to remove were Commissioners Wastel, Cepeda, and Miller. Mm-hmm. The 3 commissioners voting against removing were Commissioners Hagan, Cohen, and
I disagree with you on that, but we need to check that out
now.
Because I believe Ken Hagan voted.
We're fact checking.
Let's fact, because I don't want to. We'll have to go on. But let's check that.
Commissioners Bowles, Hagan, and Cohen voted to not remove the fluoride.
I think Hagan voted for it, but we need to check on that.
Yeah, give me a couple minutes.
But Bowles is new. Bowles elected to beat Sean Shaw in the open District 6 seat that was held by Pat Kemp for the last 4 years, or 8 years, actually. What's the deal with Bowles? Do you know much about him?
I don't know much about him. I mean, he's a longtime fire department employee.
Right.
He won a primary against a more conservative Republican. So I don't know. I thought that vote sort of broke the way it would.
Yeah.
Just sorry to interrupt you, John. Commissioners Ken Hagan and Chris Bowles voted no.
Hagan did vote. Okay,
along with Harry Cohen.
You are correct,
yes.
Mr. Hill.
They voted with Hagan. Yeah.
Okay.
So
don't question. John.
I think that
I know. Man.
I get things wrong. So I think a big issue there too with was the fact that this was a walk-on item. This was, for all practical purposes, this was a late amendment to the agenda. There was no opportunity. There were no physicians in the room. There was no opportunity. Very few people knew it was even coming up. And the motion was to remove the fluoride immediately. Commissioner Cohen tried to find sort of a middle ground early on.
Let's have a discussion.
Let's work-shop this and let's get everybody in here. But the motion was, and Commissioner Wastel did not do a substitute. He did not back off.
He was like, now or never. Our kids are getting damaged right now. We have to stop this. Yeah.
If we don't do this now, everybody's teeth are just going to fall out. It's crazy, you know?
Well, we've got a couple calls. Let's bring some people on here right now. Again, let's go here. Jason, you're from Tampa here on Skinny. Good morning.
Morning. Listen, I wanted to hear from Mr. Hill if he had received any pushback on his commentary calling Commissioner Donna Cameron Cepeda effectively a potted plant. I mean, personally, I thought it was hysterical, but I was curious if there's been any, let's say, either pushback or commentary to that effect.
Okay, Jason,
and that plays to the nature of this walk-on thing, right? Like, because that column, you talked about sunshine. And Sunshine helps us, regular people, journalists, kind of see what might be coming down the pipe. And these walk-ons have been a point of contention because they come out of nowhere. There's nobody from the public available to talk about them. Did you receive pushback on
the
that?
column? We should tell the listeners that the column was about her move to get rid of the Sunshine Law. And even though she said she wanted to amend it, the actual proposal was eliminating the county Sunshine Law for county commissioners. That was what your column was about.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, the Sunshine Law is a set of statutes that protects our right to know, protects the public's right to access to government documents that are important for the conduct of public business. And over again, politicians try to restrict that access in different ways, and this is another attempt at that.
And these laws have been in place since 1967. They were the first adopted then.
Well, and some go back to 1909.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back a long way. So, I didn't receive any pushback. The only reaction I did get, I got some emails in support of the piece, and then a number of people who emailed Commissioner Cepeda, and the other commissioners blind copied me just so I could see that there was some traffic moving into those offices, but no.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
But basically, you did take on the new commissioner, actually elected, I guess, a couple of years ago, for bringing this up though, and that's what the call Jason was calling about was like you did call her a potted plant. That basically only when Joshua Wastl would say something would she follow suit. Talk about to us what you've seen about this Miss Cameron Cepeda since she's been on the commission.
Well, pretty much what I described. I mean, if you were to go back and look at 2 years worth of, it wasn't a comment that was based on a month or 2 months or 6 months worth of performance on the commission. It was over a couple of years. And to throw something out there this big, this wasn't a motion to, I don't know, one-way a street or get rid of a sidewalk. I mean, this was a motion to exempt. This was a very broad exemption. Now she came back later and she did not return my call. And she came back later and said this had to do with the Commission on Human Trafficking.
Yeah.
We can get to that if you want to in a minute. But this was a very broad, exemption that she was proposing. It was a blanket sunshine exemption for county commissioners. It was included on the county's legislative agenda. And even though her name was on it, once the commission adopted that document, it became part of, they all had their fingerprints on it. This wasn't Cepeda's issue. This was now a guiding document for their lobbyists to actually push in Tallahassee. So your money was now, and your resources were now going to get behind this effort. So I thought it was a weird thing for her to lead on for the first time in 2 years, particularly on an issue that that issue is not going anywhere. I can't imagine anyone in Tallahassee that would pick that up.
And by the way, we saw this was discussed on Wednesday at the county commission meeting, and Christine Miller was like, hey, and she said she wanted to be respectful to Cameron Cepeda, but it was on all of their names. And I didn't sign off for this. The other Republican commissioners were even saying at the meeting on Wednesday. Again, if you're just tuning in here, we're speaking with John Hill, editorial writer for the Tampa Bay Times. The Tampa Bay Times still in existence here. Man, let's talk about the Times for a second here before we get back into policy. There's been a lot of attrition. Your wife, the longtime columnist Sue Carlton, a reporter, of course, stepped down. I think a buyout. She was right. That came up a few months ago. John, it's a different paper than it was. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows journalism is different now. We all know that working in it right now ourselves here. Talk to us about the Times, how you see it covering the Bay Area and the state, how, now compared to how it historically has.
Well, it's very different, right? I mean, we used to have, 400 reporters and editors, and I think now we're down to 400.
He was one of them.
Has it been? And now we're down to
2005, 6. It was right around 400.
And now I don't know what the numbers are now. I would assume it's somewhere in the
double digits. I think.
Is it double digits
reporters,
now?
According to what I see on
masthead counting.
Yeah.
So it's a very different time, right? But we're also finding new ways to present journalism. We're doing more in multimedia. We beefed up our I-team. I think the projects have been outstanding. The graphics, so we're doing more with multimedia. Obviously, we have to now with with trying to get a very vibrant web presence. I think the one thing that that I've come to realize is that journalism hasn't just changed; it's still constantly changing. The business is constantly changing, and it's very difficult sometimes to. I think the one thing that we probably need to be a little more mindful of is to there is a place for us to push back against misinformation, but there's also we have a job to do to simply break traditional journalism that we always did. So we can't spend, I think, the entire time on cleanup duty. It's very important, and with PolitiFact and the work that we do with fact checking, it's extremely important. I just think that we need to remember that the job is also to break news and to put projects in the paper and to continue to be have a statewide presence.
Did you ever think there'd come a day when you in Tampa when you couldn't pick up a daily newspaper?
No,
yes.
No. It's funny when I started with the Times in '96. So for years I would walk my dog through Hyde Park on Friday mornings. The only place that anyone ever pulled a gun on me, in fact, was Hyde Park Village. So there you are. But anyway, one day I was walking and I used to walk my dog for years on Fridays, and I would count how many papers had the Tribune, how many papers had us, and how many had both.
Yeah.
So I was able to see over that period. Well, first of all, very few people had just us.
Yeah.
So it was if we could pair with the Trib and sort of tread water and maintain that and build. And I saw that over the years in that. But now when to walk around and see virtually no newspapers, it's pretty incredible. But again, the flip side is I get reaction from people from the online. It's right. Well before these pieces appear on Wednesday or something.
Right.
Yes or no before we can take a call. Do you read the comments?
The comments
on social media.
No.
Okay.
Right there. All right, let's go to David. Has been waiting patiently here. David, you're on the skinny.
Yeah. Hey, it's great to have John Hill on the show today. I was curious if he has a take on potentially Jeanette Nunez leaving the lieutenant governor's office to be interim president at FIU, and who he thinks might replace her. I know Richard Corcoran has been thrown out there, and I'm not happy with what he's done with New College. It's kind of a mess. And one thing I wanted to mention with as a longtime subscriber online to the Times, I would love to see the Times have like a share article feature like the Washington Post and New York Times and Wall Street Journal have, because it's not easy to share articles from there, but it might help get more online subscribers, I think.
All right, David, thank you for the questions here.
Not to pile on, but I long for the day when I can get on TampaBay.com without having to re-log in. It feels like there's a hang-up.
I'm not going to pile on because I know John's hearing that every day out there.
I've never heard this before, so
fix that, John.
John, let me. I was heartened to hear that, like, this leaning into editorial. So, Tim Nickens, you, Jim, and Molly. Is that the team right now, or I feel like there's probably more?
So no, most of them have retired.
Okay.
So right now it's
old.
myself, Graham Brink, Conan Gallady.
Yeah. Okay.
So Jeanette Nunez, right, as David called, is stepping down from the lieutenant governor, is expected today to take the office. And it's interesting he mentions Richard Corcoran. It seems like there's this line of all these Republican lawmakers, some successful, some not so successful. We also have Adam Hasner, by the way, who is competing for the FAU position. They're going to announce that on Monday, I believe. But yeah, Jeanette Nunez is stepping down as lieutenant governor. Ron DeSantis, a lot of interest in this now because, of course, this could be considered possibly somebody who could be groomed the 2026 gubernatorial race. Then we But as it's been reported, though, Rick Scott took almost a year way back a decade or so ago when Jennifer Carroll stepped down. So there's no urgency for Ron DeSantis to name anybody if, in fact, Nunes steps down. And so anyway, go from there.
Well, yeah, and I just heard the news, I think, last night or this morning, something like that, about the lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
I don't know how close they were, and I don't really know how close anybody is in terms of being a partner with the governor. I can't imagine that he would want to bring on a Richard Corcoran. He is not going to surround himself with strong personalities in that position.
And
I don't think that he necessarily... I think avoiding that position benefits him more than filling it.
Right.
That's just the way his office has worked.
Matt Dixon of the NBC News reported last night that Ron DeSantis is really now, or Casey is really considering running in 2026. Obviously, just speculation. Although, again, the campaign's going to begin in a few months for this. It's just a year and a half away. That's the way our elections work, which would be interesting on several levels. I personally, I don't know, you're love to hear everybody's thoughts here, because we've seen with this pushback to Ron DeSantis in the last couple of weeks from other Republicans. Do Republicans, voters who, for the most part, I think are still into Ron DeSantis, but do they want 12 and maybe 16 years of DeSantis in Tallahassee? I mean, I think it's a whole different question. Of course, you're going to have maybe Wilton Simpson, you maybe have Byron Donalds also running, so it's going to be a big race. And, noticeably, we're not talking about any Democrats, which we're talking about people who are going to probably win this race. But anyway.
I don't know. We'll see if Casey DeSantis is serious about this. I think that we have to be mindful of the timing here. When did this come up? This came up a few weeks after things exploded in Tallahassee over the special session in immigration. I think this might simply be a way for the governor to keep the DeSantis brand, to keep some leverage on the DeSantis brand there, and to sort of freeze up some of the major donors and political players in the state from committing too early to Commissioner Simpson or any other candidate. It may also be a way for him to sort of control the ice break here in advance of the session.
And just get people to stop talking about how the legislature
shut it down, let's slow things down, and get back in line.
It's 11:28 here on WMNF 88.5 FM. You're listening to The Skinny, Mitch Perry, Ben Montgomery, Ray Roa, and our guest today, John Hill of the Tampa Bay Times. In a couple of minutes, we'll be talking to some people who are involved in the protests against Donald Trump on Wednesday. Let's talk about Tampa politics. You go cover that in Tampa government. There was a very rocky first term for Mayor Jane Castor. We've seen that with some of the city council members, including the guy who hosts the show before us here, who did not fill the rest of his term. Well documented. Now, you lost, by the way, let's talk about the Times again, though. You lost Olivia George, who was covering City Hall after you lost Charlie Frago. Is there anybody covering City Hall at the Tampa Bay Times right now?
Yeah, so we do have a full-time reporter covering City Hall right now. And we have a new City Hall reporter that's coming. So that position's filled. Yes.
So what do you make of this? There was an election, was it a year ago? I guess it was, right? Castor got reelected. Bill Carlson got reelected. It was not a really great election for Jane Castor, and a lot of the people that she was hoping to win did not win. I'm talking about Janet Cruz. I'm talking about Blake Casper. Very tumultuous first term in office. How would you evaluate the Castor tenure so far?
Well, I mean, I've covered every mayor since Greco. And so they're all very different, but in terms of their policies, but also their personalities and the way that they use that office to sort of sell things, whether it's themselves or their policies or a vibe. And Mayor Castor is just a much more sort of outwardly reserved person. So she is not going to be out there like a Dick Greco or a Bob Buckhorn. This was the very first job she's ever been elected to, unlike Dick Greco and Bob Buckhorn and Pam
not a big
Iolio.
Political animal.
So they just have very different backgrounds. I've heard the same chatter that you have about where we going and sort of something of a melee's there. The one thing I will say about Mayor Castor that I think cannot be overlooked is that she's been in office over two pretty major crises. So she came in and COVID hit, and this place shut down for 3 years, 2.5 anyway. And then we had the back-to-back hurricanes. So I think people are going to look back on here, at least up until the time that she's been in office now, is having been there when we had these major crises. COVID happened, and none of us knew what we were getting into. We didn't know what it was, where it was going, what the impacts would be, and we sort of fumbled along there for a while, right? There were incremental closures. Everything was incremental. Even the emergency orders, those only lasted 7 days at a time. And remember, the city and the county had that group together that had to agree on masking and distancing, and so that was a collision of political philosophies there as well.
Oh yeah,
she was very vocal on that board too. I felt
let's not forget the sort of the tension of the summer of 2020 when she's mayor of Tampa, and there were protests,
the George Floyd protests. Yeah,
former, and also her position, particularly as a former police chief and taking over as mayor and trying to sort of navigate. It could have gone a lot worse, I think.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I think she kept the lid on, especially in the pandemic and in the storms. John, just a side question. You mentioned who's on the board now editorially. Is there going to be a move to kind of bring a little bit more diversity to that board in terms of ages, demographics, things like that?
Yeah, I think so. We have talked about that in the past. There's not a big group of people out there waiting, chomping at the bit to write editorials. There's a ramp up period, right? A lot of people aren't. They feel like they don't have the institutional history.
Right.
Maybe they're uncomfortable writing opinion pieces.
You did have a young person on there, female, right, a few years ago, who's out of Pinellas. What's her name? Elizabeth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I joined, I think it was 32.
Is that right?
So we've always had, but then again, when I joined, we had 14 people on the board.
Yeah.
So this is another one of those things that changed. But to answer your question, yes, I absolutely.
Oh, let's go to a couple more phone calls before we go segue to talk about the protests. Let's go to Norm in Tampa. Has been waiting patiently here. Hi, Norm. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing?
Great.
The question, I'm somewhat saddened by this whole thing, particularly when I heard about about how misinformation has been used to undermine healthcare, particularly in the area of fluoride, because, I am a dentist and I know how crucial and important that issue is. But I see that this is part of in terms of journalism and essentially the decrease in journalism. It's almost like what Bertrand Russell says, that right now this misinformation we're based upon fascinating the fools and muzzling the intellect, and I see that we're moving in a fascist way in terms of by keeping information that is crucial to our existence from being reported upon. I think of one big issue that you talked about that we may have not talked about today, for example, was the mass transportation that the effects of having high-speed rail between Tampa and Orlando, how that undermined this us for the last 15 years because we decided that it was politically not correct, that it was something that Mr. Obama did and that sort of thing, rather than an essential tool that would help us expand this economy. Mm-hmm. And also the fact that we have a governor now that wants to put his wife, if I hear that correct, that speaks to cronyism. And that kind of thing would not happen if we, in fact, had journalists, that more people having the ability to not do the research, but, in fact, not being intimidated from doing that research. I just wanted to get your spin on that, and I'll just keep quiet and leave you alone.
All right. Thank you, Norm. Journalism, I guess, in many ways.
It's going to sound self-serving. I don't work with anyone who feels intimidated. I just don't. I work with very talented people of varying ages and backgrounds, and we just don't have enough. If we could go back to 400, that'd be great. That's not going to happen.
Right.
But I have never seen. In fact, they're fighting harder now. Because it's harder now to get public records. You are constantly running into roadblocks that even 10 years ago you did not do. So.
Yeah, DeSantis is infamous for
even at the local level.
I would agree with that.
Even at the local
completely.
level.
I've had arguments with people who I would hope would give me the public records, and they were wondering why we were being the way we are. And I said, can you just give me what I need?
And we're used to fighting for records, but not routine records, not just simple things that should be on an agenda, simple backup
when there's
material.
less people in the room, it's harder to knock that brick wall down, without as much force.
See what you guys think about this. When I got here in 2005 from New York, where I was a reporter, the press agents at every turn were willing to assist. They were helpful. They went out of their way to get information to reporters because their duty was to the public.
Yes.
Right? They hustled to get documents often. And these were documents that, in my experience, made the government look bad, related to the Dozier School for Boys. They got me those documents with effort. That doesn't happen anymore.
I think there's a big push now. I think public...
It's combative.
There's a blurring of the lines between a PIO and a PR person now. And I think that's really hurt the public.
If you go on the websites of any state agency, you go to the press, if you can find a link to the press office, all right, that's success one. But then you go there, and the contact person will be info@agencypress.com. There's no name. There's no phone number. If you call, you get an answering machine. There's not, and so that starts the delay.
Yeah.
And I'll just remind you, I got burned by this. By an off the cuff email to a press agent who then tweeted my email response to paint me as a commie liberal.
Right, Ben, and that, of course, happened to Axios that's a couple years now for you, and it was horrible.
A guy for the Department of Education.
Right, and that is, because the DeSantis folks, and they're a little more mellower about this, they were so aggressive about, it was this whole thing about, and I think Ron DeSantis really got humbled when he ran for president, because it was like, we don't really need the media. We don't need the mainstream media. We have our own media. We have our own way of just communicating, and he learned, to some extent, but we still see that even now with the Trump administration, I think in some respects, in terms of we're going to do this but in the case of you, Ben, that in your face, see, this is what they're out there. I mean, this is part of social media, I guess, too, now that, they couldn't have done that before. But I will say there are some offices, certainly locally, that have good comms people.
Yes.
They're very quick. They cut through the bureaucracy. They get you what you need. They send it back. They know from the nature of your request where you're going. They don't challenge you.
They view the role as a public servant.
I'll say FDLE has been great for me.
Yeah.
It's been, is
that right? Okay. Yeah. Hey, let's segue right. And John, stick around, because we're going to come back, and I want to actually circle back to this when we talk, because I want to talk about the Democratic Party locally and beyond that, nationally, I guess, too. So let's see. We've got Jess on the phone here.
Yep, Jess is here.
Okay, and tell us who Jess is, Ray.
So as everybody knows, if you drove around downtown Tampa earlier this week, hundreds of protesters were in front of Tampa City Hall, as reported by you, Mitch. Mostly their focus was on Trump's second term and his whirlwind of executive actions and policies, and some of them were talking a lot about Elon Musk, a non-elected regular person who is helping out over there, apparently. And it's been crazy because, as you noticed, Mitch, covering the 2020 protest with George Floyd, there's a new group of people out there protesting. It's a different kind of energy, and it feels different. So today we're joined, I know Jess is here. Jess was out protesting. Jess, are you here with us? I think we have her on the phone there if you want to bring her on. And then Nicole, are you here as well? So we'll see if we can get Nicole on. But Jess was out there.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, Nicole's here. Hey, Nicole.
Welcome, guys.
So welcome. So Nicole had helped organize this protest. And Nicole, as I was talking to you, you're 20 years old. That means you were like 15 years old when George Floyd happened. This was your first election that you voted in. And now you're out organizing this protest. Can you talk a little bit about how you organized this and what it felt like as the night went on and you saw that many people out there?
Yeah, honestly, it was like a really amazing experience, especially being so young and organizing this. I've always had a foot in the door for activism, but I never really knew what I could do for our community until now. And I've been uplifted, supported, and mentored by a lot of amazing people who have been in the scene for a lot longer than me. And just seeing the turnout Wednesday and just seeing how many people were there despite being in a red state like Florida, it really showed me how much community there was.
You talked a little bit about the people that have helped you, and I've seen some activists that I know who've been out there for years and years and years remind other, maybe more quote-unquote seasoned activists that there's going to be a lot of new people out there, and it's important to not bring a certain level of jadedness or bitterness about the protest movement to you. Can you talk about that?
I've been talking.
Oh, are you still there?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, could you talk about who's been mentoring you and what you've been learning from folks who have been doing this, arguably some all the way back to the 70s in Vietnam? Nicole, are you there? We may have lost Nicole. Jess, are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here.
Jess, you were out there. You're Mexican. You're a member of the Mexican American community, but you wanted to show face out there. Jess, can you talk about how you heard about this protest and what ultimately was a tipping point for you to go out there and put your face out there like this?
Yes, no, of course. So I heard of it. I mean, it was going around on social media, on Instagram, on Snapchat. And actually one of my cousins shared it with me because she knew that I wanted to attend to one. But I just never wanted to go by myself because I'm too shy. And when I showed up, I think I was still a little bit nervous just because I know we're in the red state and everything. But the tipping point for me was that I just want to show that I'm there for the community. And I want to show people back home from where I'm from in Mexico that I'm out here and I'm doing something that I think will help just show face and people, bystanders, to watch that these are like real people and real people's families that are being affected.
Who did you see out there? What was the crowd like? What types of folks?
Everybody. There were people, disabled people. There were everyone of different colors, different ages, and even I know there were parents out there that brought little kids. No, not little. Maybe they were 8 or 9. And so it was a big diversity of people.
And just to remind people, we're talking about the large protest that took place in downtown Tampa and across the country this past week over the election of President Trump, his actions so far. We're talking with one of the protest co-organizers, Nicole and Jess, who was out there. They are not using their last names out of fear of retaliation just because of the climate in general. Nicole, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Nicole, I'm curious. With all these new protest laws that have been passed and the implications for organizing things like this, how much do you think about your future and what that's going to look like when you're out there sticking your neck out like this and co-organizing these things?
No, it's definitely worrying, especially laws like the HALO law that if an officer says, gives you a verbal warning, you have to stay within 25-foot buffer zone. So it's like a lot harder to like hold police accountable, especially. And but I've had a lot of support, especially with people helping me organize safely, having safety volunteers out there. When we were out there, we had an amazing group of people with vests, walkie-talkies, megaphones. Like everything went as smoothly as I could have imagined, but it's definitely worrying for the future on what could be next.
So, Nicole, let me ask you, because we're getting some inquiries from our listeners about this. They want to know, are you part of an organization? I mean, we know this was a national situation going out there, what they call 50501.
They were called
5051.
5051. Yeah, but I mean, obviously, more people locally. This is the first, really, as opposed to 8 years ago, as everybody knows, liberals have been very quiet in the Trump second administration here. Democrats demoralized in many ways after the election, losing the popular vote for the first time in 20 years. So anyway, are you part of any formal organization?
Yes, I'm one of the head leaders for Tampa Activists United. It's a new organization.
Okay, do you have a website or anything like that people can find out more information?
Yes, we have a Facebook, Tampa Activists United, and we also have an Instagram, Tampa AU_FL. We've been keeping people updated.
Appreciate that. And just to give people sort of the lay of the land, there are groups that are sort of established that do activism all the time, right? I'm just thinking of Or
Florida for Change. You have the Students for Democratic System.
Yes. Pinellas, et cetera. So some of these groups were actually confused about this protest because it happened kind of organically, and there was some concern that maybe it was a trap, right? I saw this circulating on social media.
Concerned by that, yeah.
And I imagine that's going to happen more and more when these organic protests just kind of come together overnight. Is this something that somebody's got to... Because the people who do this protesting advise people all the time, make sure you're prepared for protesting with somebody who is a police liaison, somebody who's had de-escalation training, because these things can go awry, as we all know, pretty quickly, right?
Well, and Ben, you remember the trainings that we had at the paper.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I mean, it's not just about
writing the telephone number
for the convention.
Telephone number of the lawyers, yeah.
Republican convention, there was all preparedness for that. John, let me ask you about this, though, and we'll get our guest back in a second on this, and that is, again, I was just mentioning this, so Democrats, right? And I've seen a lot of, people getting more angry or Democrats, be like, where are you in protesting Trump and Elon Musk? And again, it's very early on, 2.5 weeks, and they are starting to get their voice more. But the Democratic Party as a brand has never been lower. I'm almost the same in my lifetime. I certainly can't remember this. I'm looking at some of these statistics. Wall Street Journal poll shows 60% of Americans view the party unfavorably compared to 36% who see the Democratic Party favorably. Quinnipiac survey, 57% of all registered voters have an unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party. The high percentage that's the highest since Q started asking that question in 2008. Only 45% that's still a lot, have an unfavorable opinion of the Republican Party. So right now, our politics has really shifted. We've seen it, of course, happen here in Florida the last 5 years dramatically. We've seen it happen here in Hillsborough County. We're seeing this nationally. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, in terms of a party structure, they have a big problem. Step back for a second though. Americans were withdrawing from political parties well before this election. Yeah. So this continues a movement that had preceded the second Trump administration. I think there is some. I think people feel like they're drowning in the pool right now. So I think that there is people want sort of a sabbatical, Democrats from politics for a while. So we'll see if they'll resurrect. They're going to have a very hard time because the Republicans do have the talking points, whether it's on immigration or school choice or you name it. Not all of them are winners, but they're very good at pushing these. Number one. Number two, you have the influx of conservative residents moving into Florida.
Sure.
So you have that. Money plays a big part in selling that message. So it's not just getting a message; it's selling it to a populace that is moving away from the party structure to begin with. So I'm not sure. Sort of what Democratic Party 2.0 looks like.
Do you see John Hill, longtime political observer of the Tampa Bay area? Do you see any ground for the emergence of a viable third party?
Well, in Florida or Tampa? I don't see it. Well, I don't see it locally because we are not a progressive community. Yeah. This is a very conservative community. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, generally people are sort of on one side
Democrats.
Of the they're moderate.
Tampa,
so and I just don't see. I don't see the wave statewide either. I see right now sort of a surge of disengagement. So I don't see...
You're right. So many Democrats after this election were like, I can't watch cable. MSNBC and CNN ratings were very low in the last few months. They're starting to rise now with Trump coming back here.
Can I ask Nicole and Jessica a question? When we talk about disengagement, and I believe that, but then I come here and I walked out to this protest and you see all these people. But a lot of times when you talk to these activists, and this would be a question for Nicole and Jess, they say, elected officials are not going to help us. We must do this ourselves. We have to build community efforts to take care of each other. All that said, Nicole and then Jess, how do you see your political action, and how does your movement overcome everything that the GOP and Trump specifically is bringing to our lives right now?
Well, how I feel right now is protesting means something different for everyone, but for me, it's really important for education. And there's a lot of misinformation right now on the internet in communities about certain groups and policies. And it's really just feeding this like hateful narrative in America right now. And with our protests, like I want people who aren't typically involved in politics to see this and see how it's affecting their community and try and get more involved.
And just for you, I mean, you're out there, you're engaging with the Spanish-speaking community. You know, I've talked with a lot of, you know, just, for example, restaurant owners on background. And, you know, once Trump came into office, they've had multiple no-call, no-shows, walkouts, people not even show up anymore just out of fear of that. How is that community organizing and being there for each other? And how are they moving forward here over the next 4 years, which who knows what it's going to look like?
Yeah, well, as of what I've known and what I can just gather from family and friends is that I think we're just being more quiet. We're refraining from saying certain things. And, you know, I'm lucky that I know English. So I don't have to worry about talking Spanish in front of people. But I think what we're doing as a community, we're just watching out for each other, helping with resources. If there's any legal things that anybody needs, I see us as a community reaching out to help them and to guide them and what to do. Me personally as well, I have my own business, so when my clients come and they tell me that they're going through the same thing, I do my best with my education and my knowledge, and I pass it forward. And if I can't figure out something, I always reach out for other resources and help. And I share it, I repost it on my social medias with clients and friends and with families, and it's like, we're just all looking out for each other and just being there for one another.
And how can the journalism better serve communities like the ones you're talking about?
I think, well, obviously, I'm reaching out to the adequate people as well, the people that are not afraid. I think one way to do it, though, is to just make them not feel too scared to speak out, to say something, because that's what I've noticed mostly, is that when I do see people, journalists or somebody going up to someone, they do get afraid of saying their names and speaking on their families, because I feel like we all have like these eyes in the back of our head. They're like watching us and we just feel them. So I don't know. Me personally, I am more vocal, so that's why I was willing to do this and talk to you guys. But for a lot of people, I know that we are scared.
I'm going to reset the situation here for our listeners. If you're just tuning in right now, you're listening to Skinny here on WMNF. We're speaking on the phone and on Zoom with a couple people who are involved in the protest against Donald Trump on Wednesday. We also have John Hill from the Tampa Bay Times in studio. Going back to you, Jess, for a moment, as we mentioned a moment ago, you know, one of the reasons why I think it's been documented that Donald Trump won nationally in November was on this issue of immigration, illegal immigration. We talked last week all about the show with Ron DeSantis against the Republican legislature about who's going to have the toughest illegal immigration bill. You being in the community here, obviously there's a lot going on, a lot of concerns on a front level, certainly people who are undocumented, but just overall, your take on this in terms of seeing how this issue has really, it seems like there's a big backlash against what happened just the last 3 years under the Joe Biden administration with in fact, not just people from Latin and Central America, but also from all over the place in terms of people coming in to the United States in big numbers. There's been a real big backlash about that. Your thoughts about that?
About the backlash of
on immigration, the issue of illegal immigration.
Okay.
How do you contend with that, though? I mean, right? That is something that is really, happening right now.
Yeah. So I see the back. It's just like I'm not ignorant to what people can see, because I know there's obviously going to be two sides of everything. I do think that the backlash is valid in certain scenarios. I do know people might be scared and seeing all these new faces, all these new people. But I think is that there's no resources for people coming in and no guidance. And then when people do come here legally, they're in the same situation. There is no resources, even if they do it legally, even if they come here with the right paperwork, there's still not enough resources for them and no guidance. And, I don't know. I think that's all I want to say about that, because I know there's backlash, and I don't want to be ignorant on it, and I don't want to make someone else feel like it's not important and they're valid in it. But I feel like it's like a iffy topic, as someone that's in the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Scary thing to talk about.
Right. Yeah. So going back, John, we were talking about, again, the party here. It is so different. Hillsborough County. Okay. Can we talk about Susan Valdez for a moment? Because that is a living example of somebody who, gosh knows she has her own reasons for doing what she did and jumping from the Hillsborough County or Democratic Party to the Republican Party, serving the legislature here. But, I was thinking about this the other day because we're going to have a special election in 26 for Ashley Moody's seat, just selected to replace Marco Rubio. And talking to somebody last night about who might be also challenging Moody for that seat, and Democrats, if they try to win back the Congress, can they win back that seat? And it's like, you can't even, are we even going to talk about a Democrat here? The last two elections, last year, Rick Scott won by 13 points. 2 years ago, Marco Rubio won re-election by 16 points. This is a state that it's all been documented. We all know, we talked about this. This is a very different state than 2018, even 2020. But it's not going to change anytime soon in terms of the dominance of this being a red state. It's not going to change. And if you look at, and Democrats face this over the last X number of election cycles, right? Who is going to run for attorney general? Who's going to run for governor? Where's their bench? Where's the bench? And typically in a state, you look at mayors. You look at big city mayors. And people were always looking. They were looking at Pam Iorio. They were looking at Bob Buckhorn. They were looking at Buddy Dyer in Orlando. They all chose to stay put, or to stay local anyway, because the numbers simply did not work for them. Well, that was when the numbers were better for them, though. The numbers were better then, but they still didn't work. Right. Still didn't work. Yeah, absolutely. You want to say anything more before we let the guests go here?
No, I want to thank you so much, Jess and Nicole, for coming on, and we hope to, talk with you more as these protests go on. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got just a couple minutes left. We got a couple. Chris has been waiting forever here on the line here, and he's still waiting in the air. So
this is a world record, Chris.
Okay, Chris, are you there? Here, we got a couple minutes left here.
Well, thanks. Your guest mentioned that the agenda item wasn't added until late.
You're talking about the
talking about fluoride,
right? The Hillsborough County Commission
fluoride. Yeah. On the county's website, the agenda item wasn't added until this past Monday, and the vote, of course, was on Wednesday. The vote was a stalemate because Commissioner Gwen Myers was not present to vote. So it was a tie, and number one, I think all commissioners ought to be present before voting, especially as it was a rushed vote, because number two, as I mentioned, it was on the agenda. I called in Sunday on the Sunday Forum to let them know that I thought it was going to be on the agenda due to the article in Axios 2 days earlier, January 31st, entitled "Scoop: Hillsborough could ban fluoride from drinking water next week." And I was told by a Tampa activist that fluoride was going to be on the agenda, so I called in to the Sunday Forum.
Yeah.
Even though I mentioned at the time I couldn't find it on the county website. So only because I'm an activist already in the loop did I know about the commission meeting having water fluoridation on the agenda.
Yeah, so we could ask you this, Chris. But would you have support? And I don't know where you're at on this issue, but even to have a further discussion, which Commissioner Harry Cohen wanted to do, bring in some experts from all sides of the issue, debate it. Josh Wastell wanted to slam dunk it Wednesday, with, like you said, with barely any public notice.
Yeah, it makes me curious. I hear it seems he's a mixed bag in my opinion. But anyway, if folks want to learn more to see the efforts here in the Tampa Bay area, there's a Facebook group called Tampa Bay Water Freedom, facebook.com/group/Tampa Water. And,
okay.
And the media often attributes the anti-water fluoridation momentum here to RFK Jr. and Florida Surgeon General,
right,
Dr. Joe Ladapo, which have certainly been helpful. But the real reason for the momentum is that they're heralding the science from last August 2024 National Toxicology Program report, the meta study analysis, 74 peer-reviewed.
You're right. The politics have changed on this a lot. We got to go, Chris. We only have a few seconds left to go. Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. He's right, though, by the way. It's a different... When you guys, when they had a Pulitzer Prize with Daniel Ruth and Tim Nickens, I feel the politics was different on fluoride. Is this because we were just playing more, conservative state, or a country when it comes to something like this? Well, it comes and goes, right? It's going to come back. Fluoride's coming back. I think it'll come back in terms of a statewide mandate.
I would just encourage people to go read those reports.
Yeah, right. There's a
Don't
lot out
take
there.
at face value the way those reports have been represented, both the court ruling and the federal study that did the review of the research.
Right, that was cited by Washington on Wednesday.
John Hill, Tampa Bay Times. Thank you so much for being here with us in the studio. It's really good to see you in here and for sharing all of that with us today. Jess and Nicole, thank you so much for joining us. On behalf of myself, Ray Roa, Ben Montgomery, Mitch Perry, our board operator, Skip Sassy, Irene Matthews on the phones. Thank you so much for listening to WMNF Tampa on this Friday afternoon. E-Love is in Studio One today, so you'll hear her voice and some of that for an art in your ear. Have a really good weekend. Be safe and brush your teeth.
WMNF Tampa.